Are you feeding crickets to your bearded dragon? Let me tell you why you should not. What's up, YouTube? Before I start with this video, I want to say that there are some places where you cannot have dubia roaches. For example, Florida, you cannot have dubia roaches. So therefore, this video is not going to exactly be towards those people. The entire video, if you hear dubia roaches, just replace that word with discoid roaches, because they're pretty identical as far as the contents and everything else that goes on with a dubia roaches and a discoid roach. So I know that it's going to be a lot more expensive to feed discoid roaches versus crickets, but maybe I can sway you and change your mind on feeding crickets, mainly because of how much better dubia roaches are than crickets. So first, we're going to talk about nutritional value. Now, dubia roaches and crickets kind of have a good amount of protein, kind of have a good amount of fat for your reptile. Now, going further than that is the calcium. Dubia roaches actually have a better ratio of calcium than crickets do. So that means when you dust your dubia roaches, if for some reason the dusting doesn't do all its job, it's still going to get a good amount of calcium with the dubia roaches. Versus with crickets, you're going to have to make sure that dust gets on that cricket because there's barely any. The ratio of calcium for dubia roach is like 2 times, almost 3 times more than a cricket. So that means less calcium per dubia roach per feeding, which might save you money on the calcium. Now, going into fiber, the more fiber something has, the harder it is to digest. Dubia roaches are less in fiber than crickets, so they're easier to digest as well. So that's another positive for dubia roach. So while I'm not saying you should completely cut out all other types of insects from your diet, from your reptile's diet, I'm saying that at least the staple should be dubia roach. So I'm not saying feed dubia roaches every single time, every single day. If you want to mix in some black soldier fly larvae or some hornworms or something like that in there, more power to you. That's great. I'm saying that if you're going to feed crickets as your staple, switch over to dubia roach or discoid roaches if that's what you're into. Now, obviously, the negatives of dubia roach are pricing. Pricing is such a bad thing when it comes to dubia roaches because, to be honest, dubia roaches are like 3 times, maybe 4 times more expensive than crickets are, but they're practically indestructible. You can order 10,000 dubia roaches and they're probably never going to die if you're doing everything as far as feeding and make sure they have their water and stuff like that. With a cricket, crickets have a very short lifespan, and therefore they're going to die way sooner than a dubia roach is going to die. So in my opinion, yes, they're cheaper, but they're not going to last you as long if you do buy in bulk. So let's say the dubia roach lasts 4 times longer than a cricket does. Yeah, it was 4 times more expensive, but you're going to have to not buy, if you're buying in bulk, obviously this is only if you're buying in bulk, you're not going to have to buy as often, because if you buy in bulk, you're saving that money because it's lasting you 4 times longer than if you were buying crickets in bulk. So in my opinion, at least in that aspect, dubia roaches are better than crickets. I personally only feed dubia roaches. I never introduce crickets to any of my bearded dragons. Crickets also have a higher parasite count. And obviously with bearded dragons, every animal has a healthy amount of parasites or bacteria in their digestive tract. When you add more than they're supposed to have is when you have those problems with a higher level of bacteria or higher level of parasites. And that's where you start seeing those problems with your dragons. So that's another reason why I feed dubia roaches. Because they're lower in parasites, because they're easier to digest, because they have a higher calcium ratio to body weight, body mass, and also because of the fact that it's a good feeder. I mean, it doesn't have a lot. So crickets and dubia roaches, while they both have a good amount of fat and a good amount of protein, crickets actually have a slightly more protein in their per body mass than a dubia roach does. And more protein is not better. It's actually worse. The more protein you take in, obviously bearded dragons don't do much, so the more protein they take in, the more likely they are to have kidney issues, and you don't want that to happen to your bearded dragons. So that's another positive of dubia roaches. So even though they are more expensive, doesn't matter if there are all these benefits to having dubia roaches or discoid roaches as part of the diet of the bearded dragon instead of crickets. Obviously, adding all of these other insects like mealworms, superworms, hornworms, black soldier fly larvae, all that stuff would make a huge deal in your bearded dragon's diet. But again, this is strictly talking about the staple being dubia versus cricket. Now, obviously, I just made a video talking about how to set up a dubia roach colony. I also made a video how to actually make money off that dubia roach colony, because if you only have one bearded dragon, that dubia roach colony is going to produce way more than your dragon can handle. So therefore, you might have to start selling it off. So that's why I made the other video, because most people do end up selling off the dubia roaches to pet stores or to other people that want to feed their dragons or their animals dubia roaches but don't want to breed them. So that's what another reason why I made that video. So this video, obviously, I talked about all the reasons why dubia roaches are better than crickets. Just if you want to make your own dubia roach colony, I'll put the link to the video up here in the corner, and that's practically it. Also, down below, I'll put some links to some people that I get dubia roaches from. If you want to check them out, go for it. If not, you can always go to Dubia.com. They got a bunch of different feeders, and sometimes they give you a hookup as far as throwing some extra stuff in there. So you can go check those out. Check down the description below. Check out that video up there in the corner. And if you made it this far into the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything that I put out in the future. As always, peace.
Music licensing reimagined.